I'm going to turn to Amber Phillips, reporter for The Fix at The Washington Post, as well as Ed O'Keefe, CBS News political correspondent. They both join us from Washington. Good to see you. Ed, I'll start with you. This big move to perhaps revoke the security clearances, and it seems to be Senator Rand Paul who got the ball rolling on this. Why would he care about this?
Well, I don't know if we can classify it as a big move. I think she made very clear that they're exploring this, and look at what it's done since she said that. It's dominated the discourse of the day. It would be a big deal if they did it, but for now she's floating a trial balloon. And yes, it was Rand Paul, the Kentucky senator, who this morning tweeted that he would be meeting with the president to discuss possibly doing this. You got to remember, Rand Paul voted against John Brennan's nomination to be CIA director during the Obama administration. In fact, filibustered the nomination for several hours in order to get some assurances from the administration before he allowed the vote to go through. He is and continues to be, always has been, a big critic of sort of intelligence agencies, and they're creeping into Americans' privacy rights. And so it's no surprise that he'd once again raise concerns. But last week he also suggested that that Brennan had gone, quote, completely unhinged, unquote, for suggesting that the president was treasonous for how he behaved and after what he said in Helsinki during the summit. So, perhaps this was at Rand Paul's behest. Perhaps the president was already thinking of this, given what he said to Jeff Glor last week. Either way, it's notable if they follow through and do it.
Amber, Senator Paul might have been on the White House's mind as well, because he floated the idea that he might not support his Supreme Court nominee, and he can't afford to lose any Republicans. Do you see a connection there?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a connection there. We don't know what happened when Paul and President Trump have talked, but it's notable that Senator Paul is in a moment in Washington where he has a lot of leverage right now. He was one of Trump's only defenders on Capitol Hill last week after the Helsinki summit. He really seized this moment to say, look, my foreign policy views of being non-interventionist align with the president's. And then, as you mentioned, he could be a very swing vote on a Supreme Court nominee. Whether or not Paul is going to actually seriously consider voting against a Republican nominee, which would be a very big defection, is an open question. Rand Paul is very good at kind of seizing the media attention and saying, oh, I'm undecided. Everyone listen to me. He's very good at getting, being kind of at the center of a big debate right now. So, yes, he's very much on the White House's mind. I don't know yet how connected the two issues are.
When it comes to getting the media's attention, Senator Paul has nothing on the president. And, Ed, you pointed out that maybe we're just following the catnip of this trial balloon to take us off the Putin and Russia questions that continue to dog the White House. I want to play some sound of Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, who was asked by our own Weijia Jiang at the briefing Monday about the president's meeting with Putin last week. Let's listen.
President Trump continues to air his grievances about the coverage of his meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Because you guys continue to obsessively cover it.
But we can't really, because it's been 7 days. We have not received a readout. We have not received any specific details about agreements that were reached, whether formally or verbally. So when can we expect that? And by the way,
the only specific agreement that was made was that the two national security teams from both the United States and Russia would continue at a working level these discussions. I can tell you that Ambassador Bolton plans to have a meeting, a follow-up with his counterpart from Russia next month, in addition to meetings with other European allies to further those discussions. And we'll keep you posted when we have specific details on what that meeting looks like.
Amber, Sanders argued that they had a press conference following the meeting. They've said a good amount about what happened in it. But how unusual is it not to get a formal readout out of a major meeting like this?
It's extraordinary unusual. It's just as unusual as for a meeting like this to happen. Again, that's two world leaders with no other aides in the room. We know President Trump really eschewed a lot of the prep beforehand. And President Trump has not been forthcoming, nor has the White House, about what exactly happened in that meeting. We are left to sort of interpret his interpretation of what happened in a way. And again, this is a president who has been remarkably loose and even disparaging with facts on all issues, and Russia especially. So this is extraordinarily unusual to not know what's happened in a very high-stakes meeting like this.
Ed, do Republican lawmakers care? Are they pushing for more information?
Some of them are, for sure. And there's going to be a hearing with Secretary of State Pompeo later this week, where whether he likes it or not, he's going to be asked about it. But, it's not a top-of-mind concern necessarily to most of them. And I think, there is general concern that the meeting was held without other witnesses, or at least good note-taking on the American side. But they're not going to necessarily muck up the system over what exactly transpired last week.
And Ed, while all this was happening, Paul Manafort's trial delayed another week to July 31st now. How much is Washington paying attention to this trial, and what are they looking for?
Oh, they're definitely paying attention, because this continues to be a real interesting subplot, not only in the ongoing Russia investigation, but into a guy who has been a creature of this town and the work that people do here for decades. Today, a judge has agreed to, or we knew that a judge had agreed to provide immunity to 5 witnesses in the case, and they named those people today. They are James Brennan, Dennis Rako, Cindy Laporta, Donna Duggan, and Connor O'Brien. 2 of them work for an accounting firm that had done work for Manafort and his firm, and the others are also of similar nature. No big names there. There was some thought that some of Manafort's other contemporaries would be among those that were given the immunity, but they were not in this case.
In terms of the names and the way that man is entangled with that city, Amber, what's the level of concern or speculation that this trial could go kind of interesting and, for many people in Washington, dangerous ways, and it wouldn't just be Republicans possibly influenced by it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's heightened concern in Washington for what comes out of this Manafort trial. It's expected to be weeks long. It's an extraordinarily complicated case, right? As you point out, there's no allegations of legal allegations of collusion between Manafort and the Russians in his role as Trump's campaign manager. However, there's a ton of talk about there's a ton of listen, the indictments about Manafort's connections to Ukraine and political lobbying and foreign lobbyists, and we know that some of that is wrapped in Democratic lobbyists as well. This is very much a wild card trial here in Washington about to take place this summer, right as Congress leaves, by the way, and things get really quiet otherwise.
And Ed, the president obviously continues to call this whole thing a witch hunt, a hoax. There's nothing there. There's no collusion. And so his critics say, wait, there are all these indictments. This is already not nothing, even as the investigation continues. Does the Manafort trial offer concrete pushback to the president's position, or we don't know yet?
To some extent, because remember, a lot of this has to do with his business dealings before he was part of the campaign, and that's been the argument of a lot of the president's supporters, that this isn't
Manafort's
necessarily
business dealings.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Sorry. And that's been the argument of a lot of the president's supporters, that this is part of the ongoing special counsel investigation, but not directly related to the most pressing issue to a lot of people, which is whether or not the Trump campaign had any illegal doings with Russian officials or others. And yet that's what a special counsel can do, and it speaks to the president's concerns about a so-called witch hunt, that they're able to go after whoever they want or whatever they find, and that is their mandate, and this is a great example of that. I mean, we saw this back in the day during the Clinton years, when it began with a look at land holdings in Arkansas, and it resulted in the Monica Lewinsky affair. It's the same kind of thing going on here, that other people's businesses or behaviors, despite not being directly associated with the original intent of this, are getting caught up in it, and that's perfectly legal.
And it's why people don't want special counsels investigating them.
Right.
And to that point, another version of this is the Michael Cohen situation. And we learned today that there are these 12 audio recordings, not just the one we already know about, seized from his office. What role does this play in this kind of question of how much there is there?
Is that to me or Amber?
I guess I don't know. Amber, why don't you join in on this?
Well, let me say that on Friday, when we learned there was one audio recording, the big question was, what else did Cohen record in his private conversations as one of the president's closest confidants on legal issues? And what was he willing to share with the FBI? We now are learning just on Monday that they had a lot of conversations Cohen recorded. It seems like this was a pretty normal thing about sensitive subjects. If we go back to their discussion Friday about Trump's alleged affair with a former playmate, it also seems like Cohen is willing to, or at least not fight very hard, to hand this over to the FBI. I think it's a huge legal black hole for Trump that they've got to be worried about.
Okay, Amber Phillips and Ed O'Keefe, thank you both much.